Welcome back to Block TV. It's time now for Traders Take, our chance to look a deep dive into the markets, take a look at the charts and see what's happening across the crypto sphere. And of course, we have with us our regular analyst, market trader and analyst Joe Saz joining us from New York, and special guest today, Ugly Old Goat, a man with a storied past in trading, knows the markets better than I know the back of my own hand, and we welcome him to join us on to Block TV today. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. So let's kick it off this week. I'm going to put out a general question to either one of you that wants to pick it up. Where are the markets standing right now? Looking at Bitcoin closely, what can we see? What can you compute? And what can you help us to draw out of these current charts?
Well, I never tell anyone where the market is going because I have no clue, but I'll always say whether I'm long or short. And I am very lightly short right now, just because I do think it's primarily on basis. We're out here, if you look at your December futures, have been trading about 180 over the spot, and that's just a little bit, I think, too high. I'm not looking for much of a correction. And in fact, we're not getting a correction. It surprises me we haven't had it already. And another little thing I just want to point out, I don't know if you knew this, Joe, or anybody knew this, but twice this last night, there were two spikes at Bitso, which is the Mexican exchange, where Bitcoin went up to about $11,000. And they were about 2 or 3 hours, two separate spikes, 2 or 3 hours apart, which, usually that's caused by some very large market order. That runs through all the stops, but pretty significant spikes that when it's substantially over the highs, that we made on this last run up.
And Joe, where do you see things heading at the moment? What do you sort of see as the standing market?
I'm lightly short right now. Look, number one, I always have a hodl, so I'm never net short, okay, but I am short on my speculative position in a very light way, but looking to cover and any test below last week's lows, or testing the 2-week high, which I think last week's lows was about 89.60 and 2-week high is about 88.80, right in there. So that's the area where I'm interested in starting to buy this thing, but I'll probably wait and see if we can go back and go into backwardization or test backwardization. If we can do that on a break, that's when you want to buy it. But whether or not you got to get the break first. If it goes down there, then you wait for that backwardization, and that might happen at 89, 88, or it might go down to 84, 82. It could go down. We just don't know. I mean, I don't know where the market's going, but I am a little bit short on my speculative position right now.
I'm going to have to agree with that. I feel like I feel like if the bulls really wanted to take this thing to the top, they would have by now. They definitely had a 15-hour period where they were in control, but since then they really haven't shown much other than teeth. They haven't really been taking chunks out of sellers. There's been a little bit of volume on some upside moves, but it was capped out. The most recent one being 9,500-ish. So that kind of takes a little bit of the steam out of the sails. But I remember saying this exact same thing at 55 in the 5Ks. I remember saying, you know what, 58's now off the table. We're likely to pop up to 55 because the bulls are running out of steam. We popped up to 55, and I was ready for my bearish bias to take over. And then next thing you know, we fly up, all the way up to 14K over the next few weeks or months, however long it was. So, I feel like I'm repeating like something I said, and so I'm in a neutral position right now because I think the market hasn't really made its decision on whether we're going to kick this thing into overdrive or not, and that option is certainly still on the table. So I'm neutral until the market really signals to me one direction or another, and I think the 200 moving average has a lot to do with that. If we keep grinding sideways as the 200 goes up, then if we can cut under the 200 MA, that's kind of where I start to get more bearish. What do you think, Ugly?
I'm not bearish at all at this point. It'd have to go substantially lower for it to be bearish. The way I measure trends, it is in an uptrend. It should go up. It's just I don't like the structure very well right now. I was fortunate to be having a good. I caught the move up when we were at Bali. I mean, I actually got wrecked out on the market, and went into basis. I jumped right back in. And then, I mean, the magnitude of that rally just surprised me. I think that's the biggest one-day rally or 24-hour rally we've ever had. I'm not sure, but I think it was. So I was fortunate to catch that. I stepped back in a little bit too early, and so the way I trade, I trade equity more than I do charts. I think that the most important thing is to trade your equity. And I speak from experience. People that follow me, I actually started publishing my trading record last year, and then I opened up an account with 2 Bitcoin on February 4th of 2019. And so far, we've taken about over 36 Bitcoin out on just trading with 2. So, you know, like it's a pretty good track record. I don't always do that well,
That's fantastic.
But you know, for starting, and I you know, I don't have to trade anymore. So I'm doing this because I really love Bitcoin. I'm doing a lot of other projects, but I'm also a pretty good trader, and so I'm sharing that information. Most of my, incidentally, for anybody that wants, you can check Medium under Ugly Old Goat. 95% of my material is free. If you want to subscribe, it is expensive. It's a newsletter. I don't recommend that you subscribe unless you have a hollow 20 or 30 Bitcoin minimum, because you really don't need it. All the information you need from me, I publish, and it's public information.
So then I suppose I want to ask, talking to the wider picture here, and Ugly, this is a question I'd put to you. I mean, looking at where you think the market's going to head right now, say you're building a portfolio out here, what percentage are you allocating to Bitcoin right now in terms of an overall portfolio allocation?
Well, it depends upon who and what you are. I have no problem having 40 to 50% of my assets in Bitcoin, which I probably have about that now. I would guess maybe 40%. I would recommend you're not a wise investor if you have no Bitcoin. So I do recommend that depending upon your age and your net worth, you should have between at least 5 to 15% of your assets in Bitcoin. You know, how you go into it is up to you. I recommend a dollar cost averaging. I wrote an article. One of my first articles was how to profit from Bitcoin in the same way that the professional traders do. And basically, you know, if you started at the peaks, and I think it's in the article, if you started in the peak of 2000 and what was that, 2014 or the end of 2013, when it first went over $1,000, and you just put in $1,000 a month, which at that time, I'm on Social Security. I just put my Social Security into Bitcoin. And if you'd done that every month since that peak, you would be a multimillionaire. Your net worth is over $1 million in Bitcoin. So it's kind of a no-brainer. That's the way I recommend people approach it. If you started even last year, or rather 2017 was the last peak when it went to 20,000. You started at that peak and dollar cost average, you're well ahead of the game, because by definition, when you dollar cost average, you're going to be buying most of your Bitcoin at low prices because you're spending the same amount every month. But you know, at these prices, I would not hesitate for people to just, you know, make an initial investment and then dollar cost average.
All right. Joe, what are your thoughts?
I 100% agree with dollar cost averaging. I think it's the safest way to take a lot of the stress off the table. And like, you know, even as a trader, you know, and I think Ugly touched on this a bit, you have a hodl stack that you never touch. So you can go to sleep a little easier at night if you're in an active trade, because say you do get smashed, you know, you know at least that you're not going to get, you know, reset to zero. So, you know, it's important, very important to have a hodl stack, very important to have cash to buy, you know, for a DCA stack. And, you know, with trade money, it's, to me, that's pretty much all you got. If you're making money on your trades, then, you know, you siphon some of that off into your hodl stack, you keep trading, but you also, if you lose it, then, you know, you're probably not a good trader and you should, you know, rethink how you're doing things.
Yeah,
so,
and a poor trader can be a good trader. I recommend that if you're going to trade, once you have that hodl, just trade with about 5%. Now, one of the things that people have a hard time doing, particularly, believe it or not, the best thing you can do starting to trade is to lose. If you're successful early on, you think it's because you're so smart. So if you're losing, and don't lose heart. That's the best thing that can happen to you, not the worst thing. And the other thing that you want to do is when I'm losing, I cut down. And in other words, I'm a big believer. There's a lot of large traders that become small traders. And a lot of large traders become small traders. You'd just be surprised that most small traders stay small traders. A few small traders become large traders, and the wise large trader becomes a small trader again. And so I don't know how else to explain it, except that's the way I tell people to do it. That's why, I started with 2 Bitcoin on February 4th. And it's now, the equity is 38.5 or 38.3. We've taken out 36 point. I'm only trading with 2 Bitcoin, people. And that's what I started with, and that's what I'm trading with now. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see if we can keep on the roll we're on. It doesn't always work that way. Last year was my worst trading year. And I broke even I never made any money all year long until that last leg down. I caught the move of the bear move from 6,400 down to 3,400, and that made my whole year. So, but the key is you want to limit those losses. If you can trade for a year and break even, you're on the way to success.
So maybe now, if we get the chance, Joe, do you mind taking a little dive into some charts to see if there's anything interesting in particular we can see in there? Maybe we can glean from a look at the charts.
Yeah, quick look at the 15-minute, pumps and dumps. Actually, have far less volume on this downside move. Maybe bulls are trying to kick this thing into overdrive. High of 9,600 or so. All right, that might have been what I was talking about. Pretty quick pullback here. I just think we're channeling, and obviously we had a little bit of a spike to the upside, but I mean, this has been a pretty predictable channel. For now, I'm not saying it's safe to trade, but pretty much to me, I'm seeing a good space along this line and along this line to really be taking out some decent trades. And until the market really decides which way it's going to pop, again, I'm not trading much right now, but to me, this is still a reliable channel. We've hit the top, we topped out, we bottomed out all in the same day. We topped out already, so it looks like we're turning inverted hammer. I can easily see us running back down. And at this point, we're getting dangerously close to get to a close below the 200-day moving average, which is this drawn-out white line. I'll take this out. But this thing's cutting up pretty quick, and this is a little bit of what I'm worried about. I don't like grinding into a moving average to make a bearish scenario or a bullish scenario. I wouldn't have liked all the way back in April for us to have gone sideways for a few weeks until the moving average caught up with us. Only because to me, if we would have just kept grinding sideways, that would not have been super bullish to me. The same over here. If we grind sideways, it's not going to be super bearish to me, but it might trigger people to get bearish, and that's what I'm worried about. What do you think about anything here that you want to comment on, Ugly?
No, it's just that below last week's lows, when I'm going to start getting very interested. I have a very small short position. I have some orders in to cover the shorts below the last week's lows, and then if we go into that, I don't think we're going to backwardization, but if we start testing it and getting close, then I think that bottom is in. I measure a trend by the 2-week highs and lows, and so we changed the trend when we went through 8,800 and kept on going. And I always buy the first dip below the previous week's lows. So, but there's a big risk there too, because your 2-week lows way back down there where we started out at 7,300. So this is not a great market to be trading in. It just isn't. I'm just sitting here, waiting for something to happen so I can make a move. And there's nothing to do now except, I lean towards the short side. I think it should break down, but you know what? It doesn't have to. And if it, this might be one of these markets where it goes through that 2-week high and it never goes back there and tests it. It's a very strange market right now, in my opinion. And I knew the market structure was corrected when we had that correction from 8,200 down to 7,800. I was very bullish there, and then we had the final washout that took us down to 7,400, and then so I was long, but the only thing that surprised me was the magnitude of the up move. I mean, I sold it all the way up because I believe in trimming, and actually sold some over 10,000, but stayed long. And I started buying back a little too quick and just decided to get out. I'm like I say, I'm a big believer on equity, and once I don't want to give up profits. I'm real stingy on giving up my gains.
So let's talk about the wider narrative and what could potentially drive any big market moves in either direction. Are there any sort of big things on the horizon? We're talking about either inside the sort of crypto world or in the wider market that you guys are looking out for that you think could sort of take the market out of this channel in terms of external narratives?
I'm always looking at Tether. What do you think, Ugly?
I don't look at Tether. I don't think it's that big a factor. I think the biggest, perhaps white swan or black swan event that could happen would be I've got an eye on this Beckett market, and I asked God, I need to get busy and do some research. If that is truly a deliverable market, then and they tell us how it can be done, then I will be extremely bullish on Bitcoin, because it's opened up the on and off ramps completely with no limits. But they're not convinced. I'm not convinced that you can do it yet. I've been in the commodities markets and taken delivery of things like live cattle. I've done a lot of gold and silver, so I'm familiar with delivery operations. And they have not outlined, I mean, how do I get my Bitcoin to Beckett? And then if I buy it on Beckett, how do I get it out? If this is just a Beckett contract, then it's really not Bitcoin. But if there should be a mechanism where 3 days, before the delivery date, you could send the Bitcoin and have that certificate. If you're taking delivery, you can get it out and put it to your private keys within 3 days. Now, I suspect, and I don't know, but I'm just guessing they have it set up this way so it could be approved by the CFTC. Because I don't think a truly deliverable contract would be approved. But now they've got it set up, it would just take a change of a pen of a sentence or two in the delivery specifications, and you have a very workable deliverable contract. And if they do that, it will dominate the market. The other thing that I foresee is in the long-term trend is I think there's this is the fundamentals. The next move up, I think, will be the largest move and of the largest magnitude and of largest duration. And the reason I say that, I don't believe that Bitcoin will ever be used as cash. I can make all kinds of arguments for that, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to tell you that I don't think it ever will be. But it will be used by entrepreneurs. And there's only two kinds of entrepreneurs in the world right now. It's those entrepreneurs that have Bitcoin and those that don't have Bitcoin. And I think it's going to be the job of us entrepreneurs that are in Bitcoin to get other business people into Bitcoin. And when they see the need for it, that's where the strength is going to come in the market. It's just going to be a self-feeding thing. I don't think Bitcoin is meant to bank the unbanked. I don't think it'll ever be used as cash. Gold, I think you need to look at the gold standard. It's the closest thing to Bitcoin. Gold was never used as cash, fellas. It never was. You made very, very few transactions as cash, and yet it was a standard. What's going to happen is it's not so much Bitcoin, and you have to make a difference between Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard. What's going to happen is everything is going to be priced and pegged to Bitcoin, and it's going to be off-chain. And it's already happening. I mean, I have it in my business, and more people are starting to see that. So again, it's not Bitcoin's use. It's really going to come off chain. The same with the gold standard. There was a need. Banks actually created money, but it was non-inflationary purchasing media. It's called self-liquidating commercial paper, and that's already starting to happen. By each of us that are already on the Bitcoin standard. We're issuing credits. We're doing business. We're doing business, not a lot, but I'm doing a much more larger percent of my business in Bitcoin now than I was a year or two ago. And I think that trend's going to continue. That's the super trend that's coming.
And Joe, any thoughts yourself?
No, I think Ugly opened the door for possibly part two. You know, not that this would be much of a debate, maybe a little bit of one, as far as a store of value versus medium of exchange or both. But I would love to have that conversation at some point. But yeah, I mean, you know, I do. You make some really strong points there. So, you know, like I said, I think this might be, we might need to open a door to a part two on this one. Certainly, we may have to do that. But in the meantime, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on BLOCKTV and helping to facilitate this important discussion. Have a look a little bit where the market is now, where it might be headed, and predicting some of those potential big bull runs of the future. Joe Saz, Ugly Old Goat, I want to thank you gentlemen so much for being with us here on BLOCKTV. And for those at home, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm westropp-evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.